Welcome and welcome to Mission US. It's great to see you all here today. Today we want to talk a little bit about what it means to start becoming obsolescent or obsolete, and some of the paths forward that you as a developer or designer have. So Mission US has been around for about 10 years. We've been making history role-playing games. And during those years, a lot of things have happened since we made the very first game. And so one of our challenges is figuring out how to sort of weather the tides of technology and instructional practice, how those changes can sort of affect some of your earlier work. And sometimes the easiest path forward, frankly, is just to make new stuff. Like, people get excited about it, it's easier to get funding for. But also sometimes you have some really, really high quality things in the can that are extremely effective at what they're doing, but they're gonna start withering on the vine. So we just wanted to talk about sort of what our strategies are, and hopefully some of those will be useful to you all. So as I said, Mission US is a series of role-playing games set in American history. You as a player take on the role of a young person at a pivotal point in American history. And in the past 8 years, we've released 5 games, starting with the American Revolution and leading up now. The last one we did was the Great Depression and Dust Bowl. And we have 2 more games in development. The next one is on, and we'll take a quick look at the end, on the Japanese incarceration camp experience. Sometimes people ask us what our key to success to even lasting this amount of time is. And I would say sort of that secret sauce for us has been a really strong public-private partnership. Electric Funstuff is the designer and developer of the series, but we, WNET 13 here in New York, public television, is sort of the lead producer on the whole project and brings a lot of great media resources. ASHP is a group of historians out of the City University of New York, and EDC has helped evaluate the efficacy and done a lot of formative and summative research for us. And frankly, we wouldn't also be here without figuring out great funders and partners. And I just want to call out for today, NEH is one of the reasons we're standing here today, because they have a digital humanities revitalization grant, which is a very rare thing in this world, which is basically saying, how do you take something really great and sort of move it into the future? And so we'll be talking about some of our lessons learned from that process. Mission US, again, this is a really growing audience. We're still 123 million users short of Fortnite, but for our space, we feel pretty good about it. We have 80,000 registered teachers among those 2.3 million users. And again, for us, one of the reasons to revitalize is we have a really core, if I can call them, fan base that uses this every year. And some of the older games really need that revitalization, and we want to keep that going forward. We're going to watch a brief 2-minute video for those of you not familiar with Mission US and how it's used in the classroom. This is actually a high school classroom here in New York with a lot of immigrant students and ELL kids, but it's sort of designed mostly for middle school.
Mission US is a series of online games designed to immerse young people in American history. Mission US allows students to take on the identity of a particular young person in the past. They witness key events and sometimes participate in them, and the decisions that they make along the way impact their own story. And we think this character-driven approach really resonates with young people. In this mission, we hope to deepen students' understanding of the Ellis Island era of immigration.
Isaac says New York is full of great opportunity.
Students play Lena Brodsky, a Russian Jewish immigrant who comes to New York City in 1907 and is swept up in the growing labor movement.
Was Lena on her own at this time? With students that are diverse learners and they have diverse backgrounds, you need to find different resources and different avenues for the students to really get into the material. Some of them are very visual learners, some can't read very well, and by playing the games from the beginning to the end, everyone is able to bring something to our class that probably from a textbook they would miss. On the back of your paper is your first diary entry as Lena.
The website provides a variety of activities to accompany each part of the game, including review questions, document-based activities, vocabulary activities, and writing prompts. By going deep into the content, students are gaining critical comprehension, writing, and analytical skills they need for mandated assessments.
I like the game because it's like you're under the skin of that person and you're living those memories.
Mission US truly allows students to become a part of the history. For a teacher, you can't hope for better than that.
All right, so that's Mission US is used in a classroom. It's a pretty good example of a usual implementation. But to carry forward, rightly or wrongly, Mission US is often compared to another history game, some of which you may be familiar with. And I feel like this slide shows up at least 2 or 3 times in every Games for Change, so we felt we had to contribute our part. But what's sort of relevant, besides the fact that they are a game about history, specific part of it, is that they've sort of evolved too. They had this great product that was heavily used. The tides of technology, again, were sweeping over them, and this is probably from an Apple II, I would guess. And they've moved on to redesign, redeploy to different platforms. They've spun out some sort of mini games and some other experiences off the brand. They all involve dysentery, apparently. If you read some of these things, that became their tagline. Over on at least my right, is like one of those little hand play games. I mean, I was actually kind of surprised when I did the Google image search to find all the different places. This is just a fraction of what is sort of out there. So, we have to face similar things. So, at my own expense, I'll show this slide. And this is, I don't know if those are the exact words, but at a presentation in front of some funders, I fundamentally said that. And it was actually believable and credible in 2008 in my defense. But the thing is, when you do develop, you kind of are harnessing to a technology. It's really, really hard to develop across multiple platforms and try to make the game in all these different ways. So you do sort of harness yourself to something, but the downside is, well, pretty obvious, because that was me a couple years ago, and I, since history is doomed to repeat itself, hopefully. But in this world, you kind of are sort of trying to yoke yourself to link back to Oregon Trail to something that's going to last maybe a decade. If you can get that out of it, you're doing pretty well, because so many things change, even HTML5 and all that, and browsers. I mean, who knows? So you're going to try to get the most out of what you get, and I could do an entire talk of trying to pick the right technology for what you're doing, but I'll just suffice to say we chose Unity and WebGL for streaming. And just to give a sort of, it was a lot harder than we thought, quite honestly. So the original Mission US, as you can see, was in Flash, and it was done at 800 by 600 resolution and was hand illustrated. And so we wanted to do it for Retina level resolutions for iPad. And we decided we'd do 3D models, and we'd do all this stuff, and and we had dozens of scenes and hundreds of things. And so just the porting, and what I really want to talk about in a second is the difference between porting and revitalizing. Even the porting, it was a pretty big lift. The good side about 3D models, of course, and we'll see later, is they're reusable, and they have lots of other advantages. But so we started, you have to start sort of the porting mentality. What's it going to take if I do exactly this in my new framework? What assets do I have that I can reuse? Images, animations, videos, voice recording, sound effects. When we started out, we thought, okay, we know we have to redo all the images. We know we're going to have to redo all the animations. Videos, yeah. The voice recording, yeah, we'll keep that. We'll keep that. That's good. Because that's a lot of work, casting and doing that. And the sound effects are probably pretty good too. UI UX needed a rethink, but we had been evolving from Mission 1 all the way to Mission 5, and we had some good practices from Mission 5 to bring back to the original Mission 1. So that felt like we could take advantage of learning there. We had back in the day a whole suite of, we had what we like to call the Dragonfly engine, which was a Flash-based scripting language and all sorts of other stuff that was really useful. That all had to go out the window, and we had to rebuild all of our production tools from the ground up in Unity. We had to think about what implementations and streaming and this kind of thing to support. And something that really can't go, that I really have to underline is training your team. We had a team of Flash developers and animators, and moving them onto new platforms and allowing the time for them to go up that curve and figure out these new things is, you know, really important, like that training for your team. And then on top of it, when you reintroduce revitalization, so game design and instructional design first, one of the things that NEH and that grant wanted us to do is take best practices and all the things we had learned in the subsequent years since we made Mission 1, and how do we apply them to this? And also, what have we learned from teachers in this classroom implementations over these years? And Leah's going to talk a little bit more about that, to bring back in. So one of the things, I'll just keep it a simple example, is we wanted to front and center the loyalist perspective a little bit more in colonial Boston in 1770. So we went through and figuring out how to adjust the scripts, and we can just do this, and we'll re-record this voice actor saying this. And that was all great until we discovered that 10-year-old VO done in old studios, even if the same actor, can't be matched. So we had to re-record every single line, even if it was perfectly good the way it was, because if we wanted to have that character say anything else, yeah. I should have known better, but I thought it would work. It didn't. And then the other thing is you have to not break. As a game design, we wanted to close some story threads we weren't originally able to put in the game. And as a designer, when you get to go back to one of your first babies like that, you don't just want to port it. You want to like make it the best thing that you thought it was going to be when you first made it, but then, you know, time and money ran out and you had to launch it as it was. So you go back in there, but it's really easy to break things. Like, you had a nice flow, it was successful, even though it wasn't everything you wanted back then. People were happy, they didn't know the things that got left in the cutting room floor. So when you try to reintroduce those cutting room floor items, you can really kind of get yourself into a bit of a pickle in terms of then kind of rethreading it, making sure you're not breaking the length of the game and the experience, and you haven't broken the magic that people love to begin with. So we were tackling all of that. And finally, in the same way that Oregon Trail was trying to you know, try different platforms and different things and extend its brand and experience, we were able to take some of those, the seed ideas, we had all these new 3D models, right, when we were revitalizing, and we thought, wow, you know, we can do all sorts of things with these models as opposed to, you know, static illustrations, and mobile VR really was something that was coming up a couple years ago. And so we actually built a prototype of a high school version of Mission US called Mission US Time Snap. Totally different kind of interaction. It's not like a talking to people adventure game. It's a very different experience, sort of designed for that platform. But it was really great to be able to take the revitalization of Mission 1 from the old to the new, and also find new directions to go with it, and sort of get more out of it. And as a developer, especially, you know, in this time and the budgets, to be able to leverage your previous work in sort of these new ways and take advantage, instead of it being, oh God, we have to rebuild everything, what are the opportunities that that rebuild can afford you as you go forward? That's my spiel on tech for the moment. Leah is going to come up. Leah Potter, our instructional game designer, is going to talk more about some of the changes in the instructional practices out there.
Thanks, David. So good games must fit into authentic learning settings, whether we're talking about individual classrooms or the broader educational landscape. When we started Mission US and really imagining in 2005, our stakeholders rather presciently recognized the students' lack of knowledge of American history and civics was concerning. And so got Mission US started to address that need. But really the broader educational landscape has put priorities elsewhere on math skills, on literacy skills, on STEM, which is sometimes expanded to include the arts and STEAM. Since launching Mission 4, which you saw a little bit in the video, which is City of Immigrants set in the Lower East Side, we've made a passionate case for STEAM, putting the history between science and technology, but it hasn't caught on. So what we try and do is really kind of keep our heads down and focused and not get too distracted by changing educational winds. That said, we do think there are some trends that are really important to pay attention to for developers in any discipline. Access and accessibility. We are working hard as we revitalize missions to increase access for all classrooms. One of the concerns that we have about the Unity is how is this new technology going to play in schools with different devices?
Fortunately, revitalization, though, has also created tremendous opportunities to expand particularly literacy support. So Mission US, Mission 1 will launch with our most robust set of literacy features to date that include smart words and text to support for any text that appears throughout the game. The other trend that I think we're taking very seriously is embedded assessment. This has actually posed a bit of a challenge for our design team because really to do assessment without compromising our core branching dialogue mechanic has been tough. And let me try and kind of give a little indication of why that is. So we look at a typical history assessment. And so this is what caused the Boston Massacre. So what caused the Boston Massacre? D. Okay, that's what a traditional assessment might look like. In Mission US, that question of what caused the Boston Massacre is the culmination of the entire game. And we open up the multiple interpretations and multiple causality and different perspectives. And as a player, you're asked to really wrestle with something that is very complex. And guess what? There is no right answer. So perhaps the soldiers are really to blame for hurting all those town people. But really, you might also not be sure who is to blame. So we don't currently have a good way of assessing when we expose students to this kind of complexity, what are they taking away, except for we have an amazing print-based curriculum that some of our WNET partners, Christina here, is leading. But we don't have an in-game way of assessing that. So one of our questions moving forward is what should we make? So should we keep making these kind of spin-off, no pun intended, mini games which are custom interactions that target a specific historical thinking skill? In this case, can you correctly hand out pamphlets from the Sons of Liberty to like-minded patriot Bostonians? But this is not easy to scale and replicate. And currently, the score isn't exported to a teacher dashboard. So our question moving forward is, should we do that? Should we be building dashboards? Should we try to be, funding more custom mini games and interactions? Or should we get just some of those writing prompts that we saw in the video built in digitally in between parts? Or should we focus on a more rigorous set of competency badges? I just want to leave with a really important thought about, as we think about certainly the past, present, and future of Mission US, but really any game in this space, is to acknowledge the absolute difficulty of using games to teach difficult history. What makes games really powerful engines of learning and systems for learning, immersion into a strange world where you have choices and you have to kind of live with the consequences of the choices, also can be really unsettling for some audiences. And while we have always worked with experts, we want to start working with people who are less familiar or less comfortable with using games to tackle difficult history. So with that, we're going to wrap up, but I really welcome your thoughts and questions. I think we have maybe 2 more minutes for those. Thank you.
Yeah, I could take that. We did put, these are Flash games, so they don't, but we did put a lot of we hooked up a system of little pings from within the game at certain key decision moments that go to a Google spreadsheet. So it's completely aggregated and anonymous data, but it absolutely shows us every important choice in the game, at least what percentage of users are choosing X, Y, and Z. And that really does help us guide. If we really wanted, our goal as designers was to get a choice, 50-50 choice between two, where it was a hard choice, and it's coming in 80-20, that opens our eyes to maybe we're not framing or describing this side compellingly enough to get more people in there, and that might be an opportunity to make an editorial or other kind of design change. So we use student data to, at least as designers, to inform our current and especially our future designs. Does that? Yeah. Okay.
I noticed in your video that one of the teachers is using the game and in conjunction with like a little assignment where he said write a diary entry for Lena. Do you find that most teachers are giving the students the game and they have that for the period, or are they incorporating it with some other classroom instruction?
Yeah, we don't have hard data to kind of give a to be able to say whether most teachers are using it, and we'd love to actually get more data on implementation, but certainly anecdotally, we hear that teachers do a hybrid approach, and a typical implementation might be playing one part and then having a discussion or writing a prompt, and that's certainly the kind of implementation that we recommend as sort of back and forth between gameplay and classroom discussion and other kinds of activities. We have one more minute, so we probably have maybe time for one or two quick questions.
Have you found that there are certain populations that are playing outside of the classroom?
That's a great question. Again, like I wish we could know.
Yeah, we can track timestamp data of play, but time zones and being that what they are, there definitely is play out there. I've got this dream of doing a comparative study of play styles between kids who are playing it in school and kids who are playing it for home, because I think my theory is we'd see some more transgressive or interesting choices happening in the game space for kids playing at home. But someone want to fund that, let me know.
Feel unsure about what you're doing, you go to YouTube and you look up the game that you made, and then you watch a kid do the playthrough and then narrating and reading every line of dialogue you've written, and then you keep going.
It's not Twitch, but we do get some some plays like that. Any last quick question?
One more question.
Good. All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.